G'day bike riders, welcome to another video. This week we're going to compare some of the bicycle infrastructure in Geelong to another similar city in Victoria. I'm the Bike Route Buddy, bringing you bicycle infrastructure reviews from Geelong and further afield. I had a recent trip to Bendigo and I had a look along the Bendigo Creek shared path, and it is interesting what you notice when you're unfamiliar with the area. It got me thinking about how bicycle infrastructure in Bendigo compares to Geelong. Bendigo is a bit smaller than Geelong at around 100,000 people, whereas Geelong is around 200,000 people, depending on what you include. Both Geelong and Bendigo have shared paths along waterways, the Barwon River in Geelong and the Bendigo Creek in Bendigo. Both cities have rail trails, with Geelong being the start of the Bellarine Rail Trail that goes to Queenscliff, and Bendigo being the start of the O'Keefe Rail Trail to Heathcote. Both cities have highways leading in and out of them in a number of directions. I thought I would just highlight my observations and make some qualitative comparisons. It is in no way an exhaustive or scientific comparison, just what I noticed while I was out looking around. I thought I would start with a comparison of the Bendigo Creek Trail and the Barwon River Trail. It has always been a bit of a bugbear with me about how difficult it is to cross the Barwon River, even though there are pretty good shared paths on both sides of the river. The bridges are definitely built for cars, and walkers are squashed into the side, and in most cases there is no bicycle infrastructure at all. In comparison, there seems to be lots of walker and biker bridges across the Bendigo Creek in a number of locations. There is also this bridge on Waratah Street on the west and Knight Street on the eastern side of the creek that caters for cars, bikes and walkers, and a fair amount of space is allocated to the latter two. If we compare this to the Shannon Avenue Bridge, walkers and bikers just get a measly 1.5 metres on the side of this bridge. Even the addition to the Mirrabul Street Bridge, built in around 2015, is not anywhere near as wide as the active transport allocation on this bridge over the Bendigo Creek. I also found this one interesting in Bendigo, where there has been a dedicated bike and walking bridge built on both sides of this narrow vehicle bridge. There is a school on the other side of this bridge, so it looks like kids going to school have been given a safe place to walk or ride to school along the Bendigo Creek Trail and then over the creek, without having to go on the road. Back in Geelong, this is the Queen's Park Bridge that leads to a couple of schools not far from the river in Geelong. There's a no cyclist sign on this road, and there's only this narrow shared path on the edge of the bridge, and then not really anywhere to ride safely up the hill to the schools. I understand that Bendigo Creek is a bit narrower than the Barwon River, but the allocation of space to get across the Barwon River is very low for bike riders and walkers. What about the signage along the two tracks? The Bendigo Creek track had signs at every junction with estimated times and distances. There are minimal signs on the Barwon River Trail. I wasn't able to find any apart from a few at the upstream end of the trail at Finesford. Even on the newest path along the Barwon Heads Road, there were no signs for a long time, but this one has now been installed at this junction. It is still difficult to know which way to go at some of these other junctions, especially this one where you have to go north to go south by going around the loop. What about the road crossings? We did a whole video on the crossings on the Bellarine Rail Trail, and bikers have to give way to traffic at every crossing. Often the drivers don't even get a warning sign to say that there could be bike riders or walkers crossing ahead. This was the first crossing I came to along the Bendigo Creek Trail as I was heading south from White Hills, and the priority is reversed, where drivers must slow and give way to people using the shared path. There are a few other crossings on the Bendigo Creek Trail in the town centre where people on the trail have to give way, but it was pleasantly surprising to see at least one. Probably the worst example I found in Bendigo was on the Bridge Street crossing, where there are 4 lanes of traffic and there was no cut through to the centre island. So it makes it hard on a bike, and no signs to tell you if the trail has ended or where to follow it if it does actually continue. Generally there is no crossing priority on shared paths in Geelong. However, there are some priority crossings on the southern bike link, but the give way signs are often ignored by drivers. Let's have a look at the rail trails. I headed off the Bendigo Creek Trail along the first section of the O'Keefe Rail Trail, hoping that it might be a bit easier to cross the roads than on the Bellarine Rail Trail. However, at the first crossing it was much the same as the Bellarine, having to cross 4 lanes of traffic at Napier Street without even a cut through in the centre island. I was on foot, so I didn't go any further, but looking at Google Maps, it seems that there are 8 crossings in the first 6 kilometres, with none having priority for the trail. That is much the same as in Geelong, with 19 crossings and 16 kilometres. Both the trails were signed, but Geelong one looks like it could do with a bit of a makeover. Before continuing, please click on the subscribe button and give this video a like. We're trying to get a big subscriber base so the authorities can no longer ignore the people wanting to improve bicycle infrastructure. Going past the train station in Bendigo, I noticed a parketeer bike parking with a capacity of 26 bikes. That is about the same as the main Geelong train station, so no real difference here. I didn't try to ride to the Bendigo station, but I'm not sure what the bike network is like, but it is not that great trying to get to the Geelong train station by bike. I also noticed the roads leading out of town. This is the Midland Highway heading north out of Bendigo. This is a main road, carries a fair bit of traffic and takes you to the towns to the north. These are some sections I noticed where there is a buffered painted bike lane and no parking on the side. The no parking makes a huge difference for bike rider safety, and that extra buffer improves things a lot. A physical barrier would be better, but a painted buffer is definitely an improvement on just a line. I didn't look at the Loddon Valley Highway heading to the northwest, but on Google Street View there seems to be a painted bike lane, with some sections having parked cars and some sections not. Back in Geelong, heading out towards Melbourne, let's try the Princes Highway. No protected bike lane, no buffered painted bike lane, not even a bike lane. This road featured in the Geelong cycling strategy in 2008. Key to connecting Corio and North Geelong to Central Geelong is the installation of bicycle lanes along Melbourne Road after the completion of the Geelong bypass. Melbourne Road could be a significant spine for cyclists and attract large numbers of commuter cyclists from North Geelong, Norlane, Corio and Lara. The reduction in traffic and heavy trucks on this road due to the Geelong bypass warrants space being made available for bike lanes. Because of the busy nature of the road, it is recommended that these bicycle lanes be separated from traffic as either Copenhagen lanes or back of curb bicycle lanes. Well, this was listed in 2008, and we certainly haven't seen any bicycle lanes put in along Melbourne Road. What about heading east out of Geelong on the Ballerine Highway? There is a car door zone of death bike lane, and it was great of the Department of Transport to put some signs up to tell you to ride in the parking lane. I'd love to know who came up with the shared parking/bike lane concept. They would probably have to move to another paradigm separated from reality to meet that person. Still in Geelong, heading south along the Princes Highway before it heads west, there is a painted bike gutter. There is no buffer from the fast moving cars, and then there is this random bike lane end sign. Down a bit further where there have been continual road upgrades, it still isn't a good experience, with neglected bike lanes full of gravel and 70km/h traffic crossing the bike lane. Let's go back to Bendigo again and look at the Calder Highway heading south out of Bendigo. I just randomly picked a few points and it looks pretty much the same as in Geelong, though I did find this random bike symbol on the road. Is this the world's shortest bike lane? There are probably more good parts and more bad parts to the bicycle infrastructure in Bendigo that I didn't find. I have been there a number of times, but I don't know it like the locals would, and it can take some time to find all the good and bad routes. I'm sure the Bendigonians or the Bendwegians will say I've picked the best bits to compare to Geelong, and that it may not be a fair comparison. This is not meant to be a scientific comparison. I'm just reporting on my observations and things that jumped out at me during my 3 days in Bendigo. If you're from Bendigo, please feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and give this video a like. I'm the Bike Route Buddy, and one day I'll see you riding in a great bicycle infrastructure in a regional town in Victoria.